Ezra Levant here. It is windy and frosty. That's what it's like these days in southern Alberta. Behind me, you can see the courthouse in Lethbridge. I've probably been here 20 times now for various hearings related to that incredibly momentous blockade in February of 2022. We're in Lethbridge, but not far away from here at the Coutts Sweetgrass border crossing between Alberta and the state of Montana. A bunch of truckers and farmers and basically local folk decided they were done with Justin Trudeau's bigoted and civil liberties destroying lockdowns and vaccine mandates. And inspired by the main trucker convoy in Ottawa, they had their own blockade. But the difference was Coutts, Alberta is far away from large population centers with large police forces and manpower. Ottawa is a city of around 1 million, and it's not far away from Toronto and Montreal. So it was very soon that large police and paramilitary forces could be dispatched. Not so in Coutts, Alberta. There were some RCMP that showed up in force, but they were vastly outnumbered. In fact, there was this one showdown where the police came and looked impressive, but the truckers and farmers and others did not bend. And the RCMP simply retreated. Do you remember this incredible scene? Well, you might remember that Rebel News was paying very close attention, and we dispatched 2 of our journalists to be embedded with the truckers. In fact, they stayed there 9 days straight, which makes me chuckle every time I say that because, of course, they didn't bring a change of clothes. They had to go back to Calgary to get fresh undies. But we owned the coverage of that. We got to know a lot of the men. We were in that saloon where the men spent much of their evenings. It was so bitter cold. You might recall that Rebel News did something else that during that occasion. We dispatched a lawyer and soon a team of lawyers to go down to the men, to be amongst them for 2 reasons. First of all, to give them legal advice on what not to do and what they could do and what the risks are, and basically to give them legal resources on how to handle civil disobedience in a manner that didn't get out of hand. And the second related reason was that they would be a liaison with the police and the police negotiators, because I spoke to a couple of the truckers directly myself, and our people reported that the truckers were being tricked and dealt with in bad faith by police negotiators. I absolutely believe that. So we dispatched the great Chad Williamson, one of the winningest lawyers we're affiliated with. He went down there, and not only did he give good advice to all the truckers and give them their card in case they were arrested, he did some journalism there too. Here, take a quick look at some of what Chad said when he was on location.
So, from my reputation, I do as well. First of all, I just want to commend you guys and congratulate you for taking a stand for our constitutional rights, our charter rights, and for exercising your right to peaceful protest. So, on behalf of Albertans and Canadians in general, I thank you for what you've done. It's going to be a trying process, and frankly, I can't promise you guys that we're going to be able to fudge the government on this stuff. But we've got, I mean, you know, we're the people and we've got the power, right? So give yourselves a round of applause just for kicking up. And as I've told everybody, this is pretty serious business, and obviously you guys are aware of that, what you're doing, what's on the line, and what's at risk. So if you need Marty or me, we're here to help you. The legal fees are being crowdfunded, so that's great, and you guys will have representation, okay? So thank you guys again. We're not going to be going anywhere, so we'll be floating around all day if you have any questions. We are going to be dealing with a couple folks that hopefully will be representing the majority of interests here. And once we have a little bit of a meeting downstairs, we'll be establishing our connection with the authorities to start negotiations. So thank you guys again. Again, big round of applause for everybody. This isn't easy, and you know, my family arrived in Alberta at the turn of the 20th century, over 100 years ago, and I'm about as Albertan as they come, but I still don't think that even measures up to what you guys are doing, no matter when your families arrived in this province. So my hat's off to you, okay?
And thank you as well. Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, Rebel News knew that this was an important event, and we also knew that it was, in some ways, against the law. But it wasn't violent. It was classic civil disobedience of the nature that Tamara Lich engaged in on the Ottawa and national scene. So Rebel News crowdfunded a legal defense fund. And in fact, to date, we've helped over 30 truckers in Alberta who received charges emanating from the convoy and blockade and from Coutts. In fact, we're representing a number of them. However, 4 men were charged not with civil disobedience or mischief or obstruction or minor things like that, and not charged as Arthur Pawlowski was for giving a sermon that, quote, incited mischief. News is crowdfunded a legal defense for him too. 4 men were charged with conspiracy to commit murder, which is not civil disobedience, which is an extremely serious crime. And the murder that they were accused of conspiring to do was actually against police. Those men are in prison to this day, more than 600 days after their arrest. Now, people sometimes say, Ezra, why is Rebel News not crowdfunding for those men? And as I've said before, the main reason is that Rebel News and our donors gave money for civil liberties defenses, for peaceful civil disobedience, for Mahatma Gandhi style stuff, for Tamara Lich style stuff. And conspiracy to commit murder is not that. And our donors gave money for the Tamara Liches of the world, not for people who allegedly talked about killing cops. That's not what our donors supported. That said, because our lawyers were on the scene and had given out their cards, Rebel News did pay for the first instance. We did actually represent 3 out of the 4 men. And the reason for that is because we didn't know if the charges were full of hot air. We didn't know enough, and these men needed help right away. So we actually dispatched our Rebel News lawyers to help 3 out of the 4 men in their bail hearing. We didn't help the 4th man. There were 4 men, like I say, Chris Carbert, Chris Lysak, Anthony Olenek, and then a 4th man named Jerry Moran, who was actually never at Coutts, according to our 2 journalists in chat. They never saw him at Coutts. He's been lumped in with the other 3 men. I don't know what his connection to them was. He was not at that saloon or at that blockade. So we actually didn't know about him. Well, Rebel News did actually represent the 3 men at the bail hearing, and obviously that bail hearing was unsuccessful. I spoke to a number of senior lawyers about it who said, look, if you have the kind of evidence against you that the police claim to have against these men, about what they said, what they were reported as saying, about what they would do, there's no judge in the country that would let them out of custody. That's the opinion of 2 lawyers I spoke with. But apparently the 3 men were unsatisfied with the legal representation that Chad was providing them, and fired our lawyers and have gone on to a series of lawyers And I'm not judging them. I mean, you have to trust your lawyer and like your lawyer. But I don't think even the best lawyer in the country would have got those men out on bail. And frankly, we don't know the depth of the case against these men. Which brings me to why I'm in frosty Lethbridge today. You can see the wind whipping those flags around. That's Southern Alberta for you. I'm wearing my vest to keep warm. As I mentioned, the four men of the Coutts 4 are in jail. And it's been almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in February. And the trial of these men is not even scheduled until May, which will be more than 2 years after their arrest. And as you may know, under the Charter of Rights and Freedom and under common law before that, you're entitled to a speedy trial, especially given the stigma that is attached to being charged with the crime. And all the more so when you are actually in jail. Every day you're in jail for a crime that has not yet been proven against you. So what happens in Lethbridge today is one of the four men, Chris Carbert is his name, applied to the court to review his bail hearing, basically review his bail conditions. In other words, he wants to get out of jail now, and he's willing to put up certain conditions and promises so that he's allowed to get out of jail. Now, I'm a former lawyer myself, and you probably know this, that the main purposes of bail are, number one, to ensure that the accused don't flee the jurisdiction before trial, that they don't run away. And this is often found by taking away the passport of the accused, having ties to the community, having sureties, people willing to post a bond or post money, having people watch over him. The second bail condition, a reason for giving or denying someone bail, is, are they a risk to the community? Are they a danger to the community? For example, if it is a serially violent person, are they at risk of harming the community if they let go? So those are the primary and secondary considerations for bail. There's also another one, basically, it's sort of a more general catch-all of justice being seen to be done. But Chris Carbert and his lawyer argued today that there were sufficient new facts that he should have a new bail hearing. One of the facts being the extremely slow progress of this case. And another fact being new disclosure from the Crown that the accused did not have in their hands for that first bail application. So I came to Lethbridge today, and I was actually the only person in the entire court. It was me, a clerk, and a sheriff. The judge was joining by video camera. The accused, Chris Carbert, was in a cell somewhere. I'm not sure if that was in the courthouse or in jail. There were actually two other journalists on the call, Global News and the Lethbridge Herald, and the lawyers. And the judge gave Chris Carbert a victory and said that he has met the threshold test. Sufficient things had changed since his first bail hearing that he will be given another bail hearing, a chance to present his case, his new plan, his new facts to a judge, and he might actually have a chance to be released. So it was not the main hearing today. That is yet to come. But what this was a judge saying, yes, I accept that things may have changed significantly enough that we ought to have a bail hearing and that Chris Carbert, one of the four accused, should make his case. So that's an interesting development. Of course, that is the big battle. Today was more a procedural blockade that had to be overcome. Now, I know I'm going pretty deep into the details here, but this case has animated a lot of people. I can understand why. Tamara Leach was put in jail for 49 days, and it was an outrage, but finally she was sprung. Arthur Pavlovsky was put in jail for 52 days, and finally he was sprung. But in the case of these four men, they've been in jail for more than 600 days. And if their bail is not reviewed, they'll likely be in jail for hundreds more. Like I say, the trial won't start till May, and it's surely going to go on into the summer. So naturally, people sense the enormity of pre-trial, pre-conviction custody. These men are presumed innocent until they're found guilty. So you have men with the legal presumption of innocence who are serving hard time. They are not in gentle jails. And so naturally, the political nature of the blockade, plus the enormous pretrial custody, has people quite agitated. And it is quite remarkable. And the judge acknowledged that that's an issue, although she said that a May hearing in her mind was not a civil liberties disaster. People can agree or disagree. On my way down to Lethbridge today, I saw that there are crowdfunding campaigns for the four men that are not being done by Rebel News, and I think that's good, because people who want to support these four men and knowingly do so, knowingly chip in to find lawyers for men charged with conspiracy to commit murder, of course they should be able to do that. And of course these men deserve lawyers, that they have lawyers. And I think that's a more appropriate legal finance solution than a donor pool for donors who wanted to chip in for the likes of Tamara Leach or Arthur Pavlovsky, or the 3,000 other cases that Rebel News is crowdfunded for that involve civil disobedience, not accusations of serious crimes. You can let me know what you think about that. But that's a decision that I've explained to you. Although, as I mentioned today, Rebel News did actually, in fact, provide lawyers in the first instance for these men until they fired them, presumably thinking that they could get lawyers to spring them on bail faster. So that's my report. A somewhat unsatisfying day in that the main result is still weeks away. The main hearing is still weeks away, and the verdict in that is perhaps weeks later. Justice turns very slowly, and if you're in prison, it must be an eternity. But I'm glad I was here to cover it. I was the only one in court. There were two mainstream journalists attending via video camera, Global News and Lethbridge Herald, and you have to give them credit. I'll try and come back for the actual main application itself for bail review. You might think this is an obscure issue, but I don't think so. I think it's interesting that in Canada, accused murderers, even accused terrorists, are often set free into the community, but these men are behind bars. As I said the last time I was down here, there is another factor that we have to discuss, and it is that group called the Diagolon. Not sure if you've heard of that. It's sort of a made-up paramilitary, militia-style, right-wing, jokey group, but the joke suddenly turned real. The men who were accused here showed some sort of affiliation with Diagolon online. One of them, Chris Lysak, was dubbed the chief of security for Diagolon, what I think started out as an online joke. Well, these men, I think, took a little too seriously, and they started acting it out at a time when there were dozens of police in town looking for a way to prosecute and to charge. And Diagolon provided that glue, that narrative for both the media, politicians, and police to say, these aren't just ordinary people who are frustrated with Trudeau. This is a conspiracy that have dark plans. It's not a conspiracy, it's a conspiracy to commit murder. And that was a charge they laid. It'll be very interesting to see what happens. I obviously do not know if these men are guilty or innocent. And I'll keep coming back here till we find out. I think this is an interesting case, and it's a case that Rebel News will cover. So that's my report from Lethbridge.